Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your friend and your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today, we're going to be talking about the increasingly crazy situation concerning Dave Filoni. It all started a few days ago, but it just got so much worse. Today we have some really big updates. But let me set the scene. Allow me to recap the most recent events so we're all up to date. So, on the 16th of January, TheWrap.com posted a rather controversial report. After Kathleen Kennedy stepped down as Lucasfilm president, they were reached out to by, quote, Lucasfilm sources. We don't know who these sources are, but they are believed to be legit. The first report said, Dave Filoni was not a fan of Andor. Tony Gilroy's series did not resonate with him. Now, because this had already been a rumor about a year ago, fans weren't too surprised, but I guess the reason it resurfaced as big as it did is because it was coming from a very reputable source. The Wrap wasn't just making this up, wasn't just floating this around willy-nilly, this wasn't just done for clout, this was from a Lucasfilm insider. And so since this came out, it sparked a lot of fan debate, from those saying it's unsurprising he doesn't like Andor, to those who said they don't really believe this. Clips of Dave praising the show have resurfaced online from Star Wars Celebration and other interviews where he described it as brilliant. And since, a separate Lucasfilm source reached out to the Wrap and said, it's categorically not true. But whether Dave likes it or not, his public comments might differ from his opinions in private, and that's fine. But today, things just got so much worse. The Wrap just posted yet another piece with similar, crazy, wild claims. And not only do they double down on the Dave Filoni Andor assertion, but they also say it's the one and only Disney Plus Star Wars project he didn't have any creative say in. And that's a pretty bold claim. As CCO for the last, 2 years? 2 years I think it is. Most projects on some level go through him, even The Acolyte, but apparently Andor Season 2 is the only exception. He had no say in it. And honestly, considering what Tony Gilroy said about who worked on the show, that Pablo Hidalgo was the creative consultant on it, the fact Tony Gilroy basically never mentions Dave, I can see this being true. But this isn't the only revelation. They also say Dave Filoni was not a fan of Star Wars Visions. Now I have to be honest, the Andor stuff, it makes sense. I get it if it's not his Star Wars. But the claim that he didn't like Star Wars Visions raises a huge red flag, because Dave Filoni himself is an animator, and he's on record saying that anime inspired the Clone Wars series, specifically Wolf's Reign. We know Filoni is a massive anime fan, and let's just say for the sake of argument he didn't like the stories in Visions. You would assume he'd appreciate the artistry, the different varying styles from the different studios around the world across 3 volumes. I find it so hard to believe he was not a fan of it. Now I do just want to add a caveat. I don't think the Wrap made this up. I don't think they're lying to us. I don't think they just pulled this out of their bottoms. I do believe whoever this source is someone at Lucasfilm. Someone probably very salty. Someone who wasn't a fan of the fact that Dave is Kathy's successor. And giving them some benefit of the doubt, what I can see being the case in this instance is someone who heard Dave Filoni casually spitballing, maybe over a cup of coffee or by the water cooler, something that was meant to be off the record, something very casual, and it's been taken, blown out of proportion, and exaggerated. Maybe he said, oh, I wasn't a fan of, this episode of Visions, but it doesn't necessarily mean he hated the entire thing. And if he did, maybe it's a case of Dave being very protective and possessive over Lucasfilm Animation, not wanting other studios overshadowing his work. But whatever the case may be, I think this is a Lucasfilm employee who is very disgruntled, someone not pleased with the chain of succession. I should say Dave and Lin-Win, but I guess when it comes to the creative side it is just going to be Dave. So there might be some attempt to kind of defame him, and again, I don't care if he likes Andor or not. The question is he going to allow other creatives to take risks, even if certain stories and genres aren't his cup of tea? That's a very important question, but at the end of the day, what fans really want and the hope they see in Dave is a return to a Star Wars franchise that resembles the days of George Lucas, asking the question, what would George do? Now look, I would love for this to happen. I'd love for Dave to call George more often, ask for his feedback, his opinions, make him a more proactive part of the creative process. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to be as hunky-dory as fans expect. I'd love to sit here and tell you everything's going to be great. Star Wars is saved, it's redeemed, it's fixed, whatever you want. But I'm not convinced that everything's going to change overnight. We have to remember a couple of things. Dave Filoni is answerable to Alan Bergman, so Disney has a say. I guess the optimism, even from myself, comes from a place of knowing that Dave Filoni knows what fans love. He's a great storyteller, I think he's going to do a great job, definitely better than Kathy, and I hope he tells Star Wars stories which we can all come together as a fandom and appreciate. It's been so long since we came together as a fandom to love something. So Dave Filoni, over to you, you're the president, make George proud, and create stories that bring us together. And I've seen people ask me if I'm excited. I am, but I'm also being realistic. I would love if things were on the up and up and there was monumental change from day one, but I think at least for the short term, it's going to be same old, business as usual. But give it a few months, a year or so, I think we'll start seeing changes. And my biggest hope is for what's going to be announced at Star Wars Celebration in Los Angeles. Something that really needs to be improved on now that Kathy is gone is following through on announcements and promises. No more cancellations, no more indefinitely delayed projects. Follow through on what's being announced, and make sure they're announced at a point where the stories are actually being developed, where there is actually a plan in place. And we're not the only ones who want this. As a fandom, Disney wants that too. They're gonna want a Lucasfilm that's far more efficient. So I've got my fingers crossed, and I am hopeful for the future. Now the wrap goes on to reveal something else pretty massive. Before Kathleen Kennedy and before Dave Filoni, George Lucas tried to convince Genndy Tartakovsky to take on a leadership position, the creator of the 2D Clone Wars series, but he said no. In Filoni, Lucasfilm found a more malleable protege, a personal Padawan, someone who would carry forward Lucas's storytelling ethos and entrenched investment in the traditions of the Star Wars universe. And so with the announcements that Filoni will take over from Kathleen Kennedy, the student becomes the master. He will oversee the creative aspects of the company. And another wild quote from the so-called insider that kind of proves their level of jealousy is this. They say Dave Filoni's ego has gotten so big, you can go to Disneyland and buy merchandise embezzled with quotes from the Ahsoka show. To use the example of Disneyland merch is a bit of a stretch. Do you really think Dave was in charge of that? That's Disney, and Ahsoka is a pretty big deal at the moment. So I think this person is just very salty. And finally, my friends, another huge update is for the Simon Kinberg trilogy, something which the wrap says is a priority for Dave Filoni. It's the sequel to the sequel trilogy, probably episodes 10, 11 and 12, but now we have some more information. Although Rey is going to feature in it, it's going to star some new leads. And even though this is just hearsay, this is just a rumor, I can honestly believe it. I think Dave is going to have a big say in it. He's good friends with Simon, they both worked on Rebels together, and I reckon Dave is going to approach this in a very similar way to the way he approached Star Wars Resistance, using new characters to complement familiar characters. And honestly, I think that could work much better than a continuation of just Rey's story post episode 9. This is far more interesting. New leads in this part of the timeline that interact with those characters. But judging from the response to this report, it doesn't sound like too many fans are thrilled. But what do you guys think? Some pretty big information. Who knows if it's true or it's not, but do you believe the rumors about Andor and Visions? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.